Evelyn thought she was just there to clean, but the head chef had other plans. In front of everyone, he humiliated her, assuming she was powerless. But what this chef didn't know is that Evelyn wasn't just any janitor. Before we dive deeper into this unbelievable story, let me know where you're watching this from, what country or city. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Evelyn Carter's hands shook as she scrubbed yet another grease-stained pan in the dim kitchen, ignoring the furious voice of Victor Laurent barking orders nearby. The clatter of pots and pans, the sizzle of hot oil, and the rhythmic chopping of knives created a cacophony that threatened to drown out her thoughts. But Evelyn remained focused, her weathered fingers working tirelessly despite the ache in her joints. "You there, old woman." Victor's voice cut through the chaos like a sharpened blade. "Can't you work any faster? We have a full house tonight." Evelyn looked up, her soft brown eyes meeting the chef's steely gaze. "I'm doing my best, Chef Laurent." Victor sneered, his pristine white uniform a stark contrast to Evelyn's stained apron. "Your best isn't good enough. This is loose savory, not some greasy spoon diner. We have standards here." The kitchen fell silent, all eyes on the confrontation. Evelyn straightened her back, dignity radiating from her slight frame. "I understand, Chef. I'll stay late to finish if needed." Victor's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. "Just get done," he spat, turning on his heel and storming back to the line. As the kitchen slowly returned to its frenzied pace, Evelyn caught the eye of Sophie, the young sous chef. Sophie offered a sympathetic smile before returning to her station, her shoulders tense under the weight of Victor's tyranny. Evelyn discreetly pulled out a small notebook from her pocket, jotting down the interaction. She'd been keeping meticulous records of Victor's behavior since she started working at Le Savory 2 weeks ago. Each entry was a damning piece of evidence against the celebrated chef's true nature. As the dinner service wound down, Evelyn found herself alone in the kitchen with Sophie. The young chef was scrubbing furiously at a burnt pan, frustration etched on her face. "Rough night?" Evelyn asked, her voice gentle. Sophie sighed, pushing a strand of hair from her face. "Every night is rough with Chef Laurent. I don't know how much more I can take." Evelyn nodded, understanding in her eyes. It must be difficult working under such intense leadership. Sophie snorted. "Intense. Try impossible. The man's a tyrant, but no one dares stand up to him, not even Mr. Carter." "Mr. Carter?" Evelyn probed, careful to keep her tone neutral. "Henry Carter, the owner. He's hardly ever here. Probably for the best. I doubt even he could rein in Chef Laurent's temper." Evelyn hummed thoughtfully, filing away this information. "It's a shame. Such a beautiful restaurant, such talented chefs. It should be a joy to work here." Sophie's eyes misted over. "It used to be my dream job. Now." She trailed off, shaking her head. Before Evelyn could respond, the kitchen doors burst open. Victor stormed in, his face a mask of fury. "Who's responsible for this?" he roared, brandishing a plate of half-eaten food. The few remaining staff members froze, fear palpable in the air. Victor's gaze landed on Evelyn, who was closest to the sink. "You?" he snarled. "Your incompetence has ruined us." Evelyn blinked, confusion evident on her face. "I'm sorry, Chef. I don't understand, Dash. This plate was sent back," Victor hissed, thrusting it in her face. "The customer complained of a soapy taste. Your shoddy cleaning has cost us a valuable patron." Sophie stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Chef, I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding, Dash." "Silence," Victor roared. He turned back to Evelyn, his face contorted with rage. "You're nothing but a useless old woman. I should never have hired you." With a sudden, violent motion, Victor shoved Evelyn aside. She stumbled, barely catching herself on the edge of the sink. The clatter of her fall echoed through the kitchen, followed by a shocked gasp from the dining room beyond. Time seemed to stand still as all eyes turned to the kitchen entrance. There, framed in the doorway, stood a distinguished-looking man in an impeccable suit. His eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. Victor's face drained of color. "Mr. DuPont," he stammered. I can explain, dash. Charles DuPont, the renowned food critic, held up a hand. His voice was cold as he addressed the chef. "I think I've seen quite enough, Chef Laurent. Your reputation precedes you, but I never expected this." As DuPont turned and walked away, the kitchen erupted into chaos. Victor began shouting orders, desperate to salvage the situation. But Evelyn remained calm, slowly picking herself up from the floor. Sophie rushed to her side. "Are you all right?" "I'm so sorry. I should have dash." Evelyn patted the young chef's hand, a mysterious smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Don't worry, dear. I'm tougher than I look." She leaned in close, her voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm not quite who you think I am." Sophie's eyes widened, but before she could respond, Victor's voice cut through the commotion. "Everyone out, now. We're closed for the night." As the staff filed out, casting worried glances at Evelyn, she caught Sophie's eye one last time. There was a glimmer of something in the old woman's gaze. Determination, perhaps, or the promise of change. Outside, in the cool night air, Sophie found herself walking beside Evelyn. "What did you mean back there?" she asked, curiosity getting the better of her. "About not being who we think you are." Evelyn chuckled softly, her eyes twinkling with a hint of mischief. "Let's just say my connection to loose savory goes deeper than anyone knows. Change is coming, Sophie. You just have to hold on a little longer." As they parted ways, Sophie couldn't shake the feeling that something momentous was about to unfold. For the first time in months, a spark of hope flickered in her chest. Maybe, just maybe, the reign of terror in Loose Savory's kitchen was coming to an end. Back in her modest apartment, Evelyn carefully transcribed the night's events into a leather-bound journal. Her handwriting was neat and precise, belying the tremor in her hands from earlier. As she wrote, the mask of the frail old janitor slipped away, revealing the sharp intelligence and quiet strength beneath. She paused, her pen hovering over the page. "Oh, Henry," she murmured to herself, "what a mess your father's legacy has become. But don't worry, my boy. We'll set it right." Evelyn closed the journal with a soft thud. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to gather evidence. But for now, she allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. The first act of her plan was complete. Victor Lawrence's days of tyranny were numbered, and he didn't even know it. As she prepared for bed, Evelyn's thoughts drifted to Sophie and the other staff members who had suffered under Victor's cruel leadership. She felt a pang of guilt for deceiving them, but reminded herself of the greater good. Sometimes, justice required a gentle hand guiding events from the shadows. In the morning, Evelyn would don her janitor's uniform once more, slipping back into the role of the unassuming elderly woman. But beneath that facade lay a woman of immense strength and determination. A woman who had faced prejudice and injustice throughout her life, yet never lost her belief in the power of kindness and integrity. As she drifted off to sleep, Evelyn's last thought was of the look on Victor's face when he realized who she truly was. It would be a moment of sweet vindication, not just for her, but for every person who had ever been belittled or abused by those in power. Tomorrow was another day in the trenches. But soon, very soon, the tables would turn, and Evelyn Carter would be there to witness it all, armed with nothing more than a mop, a hidden notebook, and an unshakable resolve to see justice done. The morning after Charles DuPont's unexpected appearance, Loose Savory's kitchen crackled with tension. Evelyn arrived early, her bones aching from yesterday's confrontation, but her resolve stronger than ever. Victor burst through the doors, his face a thundercloud. "Listen up, you incompetent fools. Last night was an embarrassment. If I see one more mistake, heads will roll." The staff flinched, exchanging worried glances. Evelyn kept her head down, scrubbing pots with renewed vigor. She could feel Victor's gaze burning into her back. "You." His voice dripped with venom. "I want every surface spotless. If I find so much as a speck of dust, you're out." Evelyn nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As Victor stormed off, she caught Sophie's eye. The young sous chef looked ready to break. Hours crawled by, the kitchen a pressure cooker of fear and resentment. Evelyn moved quietly, observing, documenting. Victor's cruelty reached new heights, his words cutting deeper than any knife. During a rare lull, Sophie cornered Evelyn in the storage room. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm thinking of quitting." Evelyn's heart clenched. "Oh, child, I know it's hard, but don't give up yet. Change is coming, I promise." Sophie's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean? What do you know?" Before Evelyn could respond, the lights flickered and died. Darkness engulfed them. "What the hell?" Victor's voice boomed from the kitchen. "Someone fix this now." Evelyn fumbled for her phone, its weak light barely piercing the gloom. She caught a glimpse of fear on Sophie's face. "It's okay, dear. Let's get back out there." They emerged to chaos. Staff bumped into each other. Pans clattered to the floor. Victor's curses echoed off the walls. Suddenly, a crash of breaking glass. Evelyn's light revealed a broken window, cool night air rushing in. "Who did this?" Victor roared. "Which one of you incompetent dash?" The lights flickered back to life, revealing a kitchen in disarray. Victor's face was purple with rage. "Clean this up, now. We open in an hour." As the staff scrambled to restore order, Evelyn noticed Sophie's hands shaking as she swept up glass. She placed a comforting hand on the young woman's shoulder. "Deep breaths, child. This too shall pass." Sophie managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Evelyn. I don't know how you stay so calm." Evelyn chuckled softly. "Years of practice, dear, and the knowledge that no storm lasts forever." The dinner service that followed was a nightmare. Victor prowled the kitchen like a caged tiger, snapping at every perceived slight. Evelyn kept her head down, but her keen eyes missed nothing. As the night wore on, a new smell permeated the air. Smoke. "What's burning?" Victor bellowed. He rushed to the stove, where flames licked at a forgotten pan. "Who left this here? Are you trying to burn down my kitchen?" No one dared speak. Victor's eyes landed on Sophie, who stood closest to the stove. "You." He advanced on her, face contorted with fury. "This is your station. Your responsibility." Sophie backed away, terror etched on her face. "I am sorry, Chef. I don't know how dash. Useless." Victor grabbed a nearby plate, arm raised to throw it. Evelyn moved without thinking, stepping between them. "It was my fault, Chef Laurent." The kitchen fell silent. Victor lowered the plate, his eyes narrowing. "What did you say, old woman?" Evelyn stood tall, her voice steady. "I was cleaning near the stove. I must have bumped the dial. The fault is mine." Victor's nostrils flared. He glanced between Evelyn and Sophie, suspicion dawning in his eyes. "You're lying," he hissed. "Both of you, in my office. Now." As they followed Victor, Sophie whispered, "Why did you do that?" Evelyn squeezed her hand. "Because it's the right thing to do." Victor slammed the office door behind them. "I've had enough of your conspiracies. You think I don't see what's going on?" The whispers, the looks. Sophie trembled. "Chef, please dash." Silence. Victor hurled the plate against the wall. It shattered, shards flying dangerously close to Evelyn's face. "I built this restaurant from nothing. I won't let you destroy it with your incompetence and your what, Chef Laurent?" Evelyn's voice was steel. "Our age, our gender, our race." Victor's face paled, then flushed crimson. "How dare you accuse me of dash?" "I accuse you of nothing but your own actions," Evelyn interrupted, "which speak far louder than any words." For a moment, Victor seemed at a loss. Then his eyes hardened. "You're fired. Both of you. Get out of my restaurant." Sophie gasped, "But Chef Dash, out." As they turned to leave, Evelyn's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, a small smile playing at her lips. "What are you smirking at, old woman?" Victor snarled. Evelyn held up her phone. An email. Chef Laurent. From Henry Carter. Victor froze. What? It seems Mr. Carter has some concerns about the kitchen environment. He's coming for a surprise visit with Charles DuPont. The color drained from Victor's face. DuPont. Again. Evelyn nodded. Tomorrow night. Mr. Carter says he wants to see Le Savory at its absolute best. Victor's mind raced, his ego battling his anger. Finally, he spat. Fine, you can stay. But one more mistake, and you're both out. Understood? They nodded, hurrying from the office. Outside, Sophie sagged against the wall. I can't believe that worked. How did you know about the email? Evelyn's eyes twinkled. I didn't. But sometimes, a little bluff goes a long way. Sophie stared at her in awe. Who are you really? Before Evelyn could answer, Victor's voice boomed from the kitchen. Back to work. Now. As they hurried back, Evelyn whispered, Hold on, child. The tide is turning. The next day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm brewing inside Le Savory. Victor was manic, barking orders and criticizing every detail. Evelyn moved through the chaos like a ghost, observing, documenting. She caught snippets of conversation, staff discussing Victor's behavior, sharing stories of abuse. A quiet rebellion was forming. As evening approached, tension reached a fever pitch. Victor gathered the staff, his eyes wild. Tonight is everything. If we impress DuPont and Carter, Le Savory will be unstoppable. Fail, and I'll make sure none of you work in this city again. Understood? Nervous nods all around. As the staff dispersed, Evelyn noticed Sophie's hands shaking as she prepared her station. Deep breaths, child. Evelyn murmured. Remember why you're here. Your passion, your talent. Sophie managed a weak smile. Thank you, Evelyn. I don't know what I'd do without you. As the first diners arrived, Evelyn's phone buzzed. A text from Henry. We're here. Good luck, Mom. Evelyn took a deep breath. The final act was about to begin. The day of Charles DuPont's visit dawned with an air of electric anticipation. Le Savory's kitchen, usually a hive of controlled chaos, now thrummed with barely contained panic. Evelyn arrived early, her weathered hands steady as she began her routine, a stark contrast to the frenzied energy around her. Victor burst through the doors, his chef's whites pristine, his eyes wild. Listen up, you incompetent fools. Today, we prove ourselves to the world. One mistake, and I'll have your heads. The staff flinched collectively, a ripple of fear passing through the kitchen. Evelyn caught Sophie's eye, offering a subtle nod of encouragement. The young sous chef managed a weak smile in return, her knuckles white as she gripped her knife. As the morning progressed, Victor's tyranny reached new heights. He hovered over every station, criticizing, berating, occasionally throwing utensils in fits of rage. Evelyn moved through the chaos like a ghost, observing, documenting, her presence a silent challenge to Victor's reign of terror. You there? Victor's voice cracked like a whip. Evelyn turned, meeting his gaze steadily. I want every surface spotless. If DuPont sees so much as a speck of dust, you'll be out on the street faster than you can blink. Evelyn nodded, her voice calm. Of course, chef. I'll make sure everything shines. Victor's eyes narrowed, suspicion flickering across his face. Before he could respond, a commotion near the prep station drew his attention. What now? He roared, storming off. Sophie sidled up to Evelyn, her voice a whisper. How do you do it? Stay so calm. Evelyn smiled, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. Years of practice, child, and the knowledge that no storm lasts forever. As the dinner service approached, tension in the kitchen reached a fever pitch. Victor gathered the staff, his face a mask of barely contained fury. Tonight is everything. We impress DuPont, or I'll make sure none of you ever work in this city again. Understood? A chorus of nervous, yes, chef, echoed through the kitchen. As the staff dispersed, Evelyn noticed Sophie's hands shaking as she returned to her station. She placed a comforting hand on the young woman's shoulder. Deep breaths. Child, remember why you're here. Your passion, your talent. Sophie managed a weak smile. Thank you, Evelyn. I don't know what I'd do without you. As the first diners arrived, Evelyn's phone buzzed discreetly. A text from Henry. We're here. Good luck, Mom. Evelyn took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. The final act was about to begin. The kitchen erupted into a frenzy as orders poured in. Victor barked commands, his face growing redder with each passing minute. Evelyn moved swiftly, cleaning, observing, her keen eyes missing nothing. Halfway through the service, a hush fell over the kitchen. Charles DuPont had arrived. Victor's voice cut through the silence. This is it, you useless lot. Perfection, or you're all finished. Understood. The staff scrambled to their stations, fear and determination etched on their faces. Evelyn caught Sophie's eye, giving her a reassuring nod. The young chef took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as she turned to her station. As DuPont's order came in, Victor hovered over every station, scrutinizing each element. Faster, he snarled. It must be perfect. Evelyn watched as Sophie carefully plated the critic's dish, her hands steady despite the pressure. Just as she was about to hand off, Victor swooped in, examining it with a critical eye. His face contorted with rage. What is this? He hissed, pointing to a barely noticeable imperfection in the sauce's presentation. Sophie's face paled. I am sorry, chef. I can fix a dash. Fix it. Victor's voice rose to a shout. You've ruined everything. In a sudden, violent motion, Victor swept the plate off the counter. It shattered on the floor, splattering sauce and scattering perfectly prepared ingredients across the tiles. The kitchen fell silent, all eyes on Victor and Sophie. Evelyn stepped forward, her voice cutting through the tension. Chef Laurent, perhaps dash. Victor whirled on her, his face purple with rage. This is your fault too, old woman. Your incompetence has infected my entire kitchen. He advanced on Evelyn, looming over her. I should have thrown you out on the street the moment you stepped foot in my restaurant. Evelyn stood her ground, her voice steady. Your restaurant, Chef Laurent. Victor's eyes bulged. Yes, my restaurant. I built Loose Savory from nothing. It's mine. A new voice cut through the chaos. I'm afraid that's not entirely accurate, Victor. All heads turned to see Henry Carter standing in the kitchen doorway, Charles DuPont at his side. The critic's eyebrows were raised, his expression a mix of shock and intrigue. Victor's face drained of color. Mr. Carter, I can explain dash. Henry held up a hand, silencing him. I think we've all heard quite enough, Victor. He turned to Evelyn, his voice softening. Are you all right, Mom? A collective gasp rippled through the kitchen. Evelyn smiled, straightening her back. I'm fine, Henry. Though I think it's time we cleared the air, don't you? Victor's eyes darted between Evelyn and Henry, realization dawning on his face. Mom, what is this? Henry stepped forward, his voice firm. This, Victor, is the end of your reign of terror. Evelyn Carter isn't just a janitor. She's my stepmother and the woman who invested in Le Savory when it was nothing more than a dream. The kitchen erupted into shocked whispers. Sophie stared at Evelyn, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning understanding. Evelyn turned to the staff, her voice gentle but firm. I came here to see for myself what was happening in this kitchen, to understand why the restaurant Henry's father and I helped build had become a place of fear and cruelty. She faced Victor, her eyes hard. What I found was a man so consumed by his own ego that he'd forgotten the most important ingredient in any kitchen, kindness. Victor sputtered, his face alternating between red and white. This is ridiculous. You can dash. We can and we will, Henry interrupted. Your behavior is unacceptable, Victor. It ends now. Charles DuPont stepped forward, his expression grave. I came here tonight expecting culinary excellence. Instead, I witnessed something far more important, a reckoning long overdue. He turned to Evelyn, a hint of admiration in his eyes. Madam Carter, I must say your methods are unorthodox but effective. I look forward to seeing how Loose Savory evolves under more compassionate leadership. Victor's shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of him. So that's it. You're firing me. Henry nodded. Effective immediately. Please collect your things and leave. As Victor trudged towards his office, defeated, Sophie stepped forward. Mr. Carter, Miss Carter, what happens now? Evelyn smiled, placing a gentle hand on Sophie's shoulder. Now, my dear, we rebuild. We create the kitchen and the restaurant that Loose Savory was always meant to be. She turned to address the entire staff. A place where talent is nurtured, not crushed, where creativity flourishes, and where kindness is the secret ingredient in every dish. As the reality of the situation sank in, a wave of relief washed over the kitchen. Staff members began to smile, some even daring to laugh. The oppressive cloud that had hung over Loose Savory for so long was finally lifting. Charles DuPont cleared his throat. Well, this has certainly been an illuminating evening, but I believe I came here for dinner, and I'm still rather peckish. Henry grinned. Of course, Mr. DuPont. Sophie, would you do the honors? Sophie's eyes widened. Me. But I dash. Evelyn squeezed her hand. You can do this, child. Show us what you're capable of when you're free to create. As Sophie returned to her station, a new energy filled the kitchen. Staff members rallied around her, offering support and encouragement. For the first time in years, Loose Savory's kitchen hummed with joy and camaraderie. Evelyn watched it all, a sense of pride and accomplishment washing over her. She caught Henry's eye, and he nodded, a silent acknowledgement of a job well done. As the night wound down, with DuPont's glowing praise still ringing in their ears, Evelyn found herself alone in the kitchen with Sophie. The young chef was cleaning her station, a contented smile on her face. So, Sophie said, a hint of playfulness in her voice. Any other secrets you'd like to share, Miss Carter? Evelyn chuckled. Just one, my dear. She leaned in close, her eyes twinkling. I always said kindness was the secret ingredient. Turns out, it's the most important one of all. The kitchen of Loose Savory fell into a stunned silence as the truth of Evelyn's identity sank in. Victor Laurent, his face ashen, stared at the woman he'd tormented for weeks, his mind struggling to reconcile the frail janitor with the restaurant's true matriarch. Evelyn stood tall, her eyes fixed on Victor. For years, I've watched from afar as the dream my late husband and I built crumbled under your leadership, Victor. I came here to see for myself, to understand why the place we poured our hearts into had become a crucible of fear and cruelty. Victor's shock gave way to anger. He straightened, his chef's whites pristine, but his dignity in tatters. You deceive me, all of you. He gestured wildly at Henry and the staff. This was a setup from the start. Sophie stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. No, chef. This was a chance for the truth to come out, a chance for us to reclaim our dignity. Other staff members murmured in agreement, years of pent-up frustration finally finding voice. Victor's eyes darted around the kitchen, searching for allies and finding none. Charles DuPont cleared his throat. I must say, this is not the evening I anticipated when I accepted Mr. Carter's invitation, but perhaps it's the evening Loose Savory needed. Henry nodded grimly. Indeed, Mr. DuPont. And now, it's time to address the elephant in the room. He turned to Victor. Your behavior is unacceptable, Victor. It ends now. You're fired, effective immediately. Victor's face contorted with rage. Fired. You can't fire me. I made this restaurant what it is. Did you? Evelyn's soft voice cut through Victor's bluster. Or did you twist it into something unrecognizable? A place where talent is crushed, where fear reigns, where the joy of cooking is snuffed out. She turned to the staff, her eyes warm. Loose Savory was built on a foundation of passion, creativity, and above all, kindness. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that, but it's not too late to reclaim it. Victor, sensing his control slipping away, made one last desperate attempt. You don't understand. Perfection demands sacrifice. These people, he gestured dismissively at the staff. They're soft, weak. They need a firm hand to dash. To what, Victor? Sophie interrupted, her voice stronger now. To break us. To make us hate the very thing we once loved. Other staff members chimed in, a chorus of long-suppressed grievances finally finding voice. Victor's face reddened as he realized the tide had turned irrevocably against him. Evelyn raised a hand, silencing the room. Victor, you speak of sacrifice. But true leadership isn't about breaking people down. It's about lifting them up, nurturing their talents, helping them grow. She reached into her pocket, pulling out a small, worn notebook. I've documented every instance of your cruelty, every act of bullying, every moment you chose fear over kindness. But more importantly, I've witnessed the resilience of this staff, their passion, their skill, their unwavering dedication despite your best efforts to crush their spirits. Victor lunged for the notebook, but Henry stepped between them. That's enough, Victor. It's over. As the reality of his situation sank in, Victor's shoulders sagged. The fight drained from him, leaving behind a shell of the tyrannical chef he'd been moments before. Security will escort you out, Henry said firmly. You have 30 minutes to collect your personal belongings. As Victor was led away, a palpable sense of relief washed over the kitchen. Staff members embraced, some wiping away tears of joy and disbelief. Evelyn turned to Sophie, who stood shell-shocked in the midst of the celebration. Are you all right, my dear? Sophie nodded, a tentative smile breaking across her face. I can't believe it's over. That all of this. She gestured helplessly, unable to find the words. Evelyn squeezed her hand. Sometimes, the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected places. Now, what do you say we show Mr. DuPont what Le Savory is truly capable of? Sophie's eyes widened. But Chef Lawrence gone. Who's going to dash? You are, Henry interjected, smiling. If you're willing, of course. Sophie looked from Henry to Evelyn, then to her fellow staff members, who nodded encouragingly. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. I'd be honored. What followed was a whirlwind of activity. With Victor's oppressive presence gone, the kitchen came alive with energy it hadn't seen in years. Sophie took charge, her natural leadership skills shining through as she guided the team through a reimagined menu. Charles DuPont watched it all with keen interest, occasionally jotting notes in a small pad. As the first dishes emerged from the kitchen, a hush fell over the dining room. Evelyn and Henry stood side by side, watching as DuPont took his first bite. The critic's eyebrows rose, a look of pleasant surprise crossing his face. Remarkable, he murmured, reaching for another forkful. The technical skill is impeccable, but there's something more. A warmth, a joy that infuses every bite. As the evening progressed, the transformation of Le Savory became more and more apparent. Laughter drifted from the kitchen, a sound that had been absent for far too long. The dining room buzzed with excitement as word spread of the dramatic changes behind the scenes. Near midnight, as the last customers departed, Evelyn gathered the staff. I want to thank each and every one of you, she began, her voice thick with emotion. Your resilience, your dedication, your unwavering spirit in the face of adversity, it's nothing short of inspirational. She paused, looking around at the faces before her. Le Savory was built on a dream of creating not just exceptional food, but a place where people could come together, where creativity could flourish, where kindness was the most important ingredient of all. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that dream. But tonight, thanks to all of you, we've taken the first step towards reclaiming it. Henry stepped forward. Moving forward, things will be different here. We're going to rebuild Le Savory's culture from the ground up. No more fear, no more tyranny. Instead, we'll foster an environment of mutual respect, creativity, and growth. He turned to Sophie. Sophie, if you're willing, we'd like to offer you the position of executive chef. Sophie's eyes widened in disbelief. Me? But I'm not sure I'm ready. Evelyn placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You're more than ready, my dear. You've shown incredible strength and leadership tonight. But more importantly, you understand what truly matters in a kitchen. Not just skill, but heart." Sophie looked around at her fellow staff members, seeing encouragement and support in their faces. She took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders. "I accept. Thank you for this opportunity. I promise I won't let you down." As the staff broke into applause, Charles DuPont approached Evelyn and Henry. "I must say, this has been one of the most extraordinary evenings of my career. The food was exceptional, yes, but what truly impressed me was the transformation I witnessed. The spirit, the passion that emerged once the cloud of fear was lifted. It was nothing short of miraculous." He paused, a twinkle in his eye. "I look forward to seeing how Loose Savory evolves under this new leadership. Something tells me the best is yet to come." As DuPont departed, Evelyn and Henry shared a look of quiet triumph. The road ahead would not be easy, but they had taken the first crucial step towards redemption. In the days that followed, word of Loose Savory's dramatic transformation spread like wildfire. Charles DuPont's review, when it was published, was nothing short of glowing. He praised not only the food but the restaurant's commitment to fostering a positive, nurturing environment. Under Sophie's leadership, the kitchen flourished. Staff members who had been on the verge of quitting found renewed passion for their craft. Loose Savory became known not just for its exceptional cuisine, but for its warm, inviting atmosphere and the palpable joy that emanated from the kitchen. One quiet evening, as the last customers departed, Evelyn found Sophie in the kitchen, carefully plating a new dish she'd been working on. "It looks beautiful," Evelyn said, admiring the artful arrangement. Sophie smiled, a confidence in her bearing that hadn't been there before. "Thank you. I've been experimenting with some new flavor combinations." Evelyn nodded approvingly. "That's what I love to see. Creativity, passion, and just a hint of daring." Sophie's smile widened. "I learned from the best. Your undercover act was pretty daring itself." Evelyn chuckled. "Sometimes, my dear, the most powerful changes come from most unexpected places. And sometimes, all it takes is one person willing to stand up and say, 'Enough.'" She gazed around the kitchen, taking in the gleaming surfaces, the orderly workstations, the lingering aroma of delicious food. But more than that, she felt the warmth, the sense of camaraderie and shared purpose that now permeated every corner of Loose Savory. "You know," Evelyn mused, her eyes twinkling, "I always said kindness was the secret ingredient. Turns out, it's the most important one of all." Sophie nodded, understanding dawning in her eyes. "It's not just about the food, is it? It's about creating something greater than ourselves. A place where people can come together, where talents can flourish, where dreams can become reality," Evelyn finished softly. "That's what Loose Savory was always meant to be. And thanks to you, to all of us, that's what it's becoming once again." As they stood there, basking in the quiet triumph of the evening, Evelyn felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The journey had been long, and at times painful, but the destination was worth every step. Loose Savory was more than just a restaurant now. It was a testament to the power of resilience, of kindness, of standing up for what's right even in the face of overwhelming odds. And as Evelyn looked at Sophie, seeing the strength and passion shining in the young chef's eyes, she knew that the legacy she and her late husband had begun would continue to flourish for generations to come.